Hi everyone, artist Elizabeth Whelan back in her studio on Chappaquiddick Island, here with my cup of coffee and a pile of books over here that I want to share with you. So I've picked 6 books, which is actually quite a pared down amount. If you saw the bookshelves in the other room, they are overflowing with books of all sorts. I love them, and particularly heavy art books. So here are a few to add to your collection, but we'll start off with a paperback. I've just finished reading this one. It's called Man with a Blue Scarf by Martin Gayford. And it is the story of Martin getting his portrait painted by Lucian Freud. And if you're not familiar with Lucian Freud already, he was an extremely famous British artist, figurative artist, and I would say influenced the entire generation, his own and generation following of figurative artists. You can really see his influence anywhere. What's wonderful about this book, though, it's written, evidently being painted by Lucian Freud was a long and rather excruciating process. And so you're hearing about it from the point of view of the fellow actually being painted as he comes back day after day and wrote the book. But what's really wonderful is you're also getting a sense of the conversations, what Lucian was speaking to him about during the course of these sessions, and the way that he worked and approached his artwork. So it's really quite a fascinating and an entertaining read as well. Let's see, the next one. This is the one I was mentioning in the slideshow on abstract work the other day, called Ninth Street Women. And it's quite a tome. It's a big book. It has some illustrations in it of the artwork and such. It is thankfully also now available on Kindle, which it wasn't when I first got this. But it is a really marvelous look at a time. I think it's mostly concentrating on the 40s and 50s, but it follows these artists, these women artists, and their career and the struggles they had, and talks, of course, about the art scene at the time, which is really fascinating. Amazing to see how the European influences came over during the war, and what that did to the New York art scene, and how New York became the hub where places like Paris and London had previously been. So, Ninth Street Women, I highly recommend it. All right, next one is if you are really into sort of esoterica about art in general. This one is called Color, A Natural History of the Palette. And it takes you on this is by Victoria Finlay. Oh, the last book was by Mary Gabriel. So this one is by Victoria Finlay, Finlay. And this is a book that, here, I should show you a little bit closer, shouldn't I? This is a book about really each color that we work with, vermilion, cobalt, all of those things, where these colors came from, the trade behind them, the history behind them, who used what. It's pretty cool. Let's see. All right, this next one is for those of you who like a little bit of a scientific read. This one is called Making Space. It is not an art book. It is a science book by Jennifer Groh, Groh, and it's called Making Space, How the Brain Knows Where Things Are. But I love this book. I wish every artist would read it, because it helps explain why we see things so differently. The receptors that take the information that we look at and put it in our brain and then send that information to the hand and spit it out, and the way our eyes see color, and how probably each one of us sees color differently, how we see form and objects differently, and how we interpret them differently. How our DNA itself is probably affecting all of those factors, so that we each have a unique vision. What's wonderful about it is it gives you confidence to a certain extent in your own ability, that what you see doesn't have to look like what somebody else sees, that you have your own chemical and physiological makeup, and your path is just as good as anybody else's. So if you're not used to reading science books, you might need to read this in small chunks, but she's made it as accessible as she possibly can, and it really is very fascinating. So give it a try. Now here's an older book written in the early 1990s I'll try to get it so you can't see the glare. I bought this years ago when I was working as an illustrator. It's called Picture This, How Pictures Work, and it's by Molly Bang, B-A-N-G. And it is a very simple book, but it's really just fascinating the way she breaks down, how various different designs and forms of composition affect how a picture is interpreted. What we see when we look at a painting that has certain different groupings of forms in it. Like I said, I got it when I was an illustrator because if you're a children's book illustrator in particular, and you're trying to simplify the number of characters you have in the scene and get a point across, this book really helps you do that, helps you understand what you're looking at. But if you're an artist of any sort at all, this book is useful because once you have internalized the information in it, and it's a quick read, it's not an in-depth treatise, you will be able to start seeing how that works in paintings from Titian, to contemporary work, because the same rules apply. We respond to visual stimuli as human beings in a certain way. We think certain things are threatening, certain things are calming, certain things are not a threat. And interpreting those sort of primal instincts into illustration or into painting or whatever is a fascinating exercise. And this book by Molly Bang is the best I've ever come across in order to do that. So I think this is available I think it's in reprint now, but it's also available on the secondhand market. There are definitely copies around. I would highly recommend adding that to your art library. Okay, one more. This book is a new, I just love this book. It's come out very recently from the Royal Drawing School in England, and it's called Ways of Drawing. It is also a relatively large book, hardback, and it contains, it contains many, 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 many examples of contemporary drawing. And the reason I recommend this book so highly is because, to begin with, it frees a lot of people up. If you like to draw, often drawing is, I think, probably mostly on this side of the Atlantic, is not taken quite as seriously. I think there's a little bit more interest in drawing in Europe and in the UK than there is over here. I'm trying to change that with the Martha's Vineyard Drawing Prize and my classes on drawing and that sort of thing. But Ways of Drawing will show you all the many fantastic expressive ways contemporary artists are choosing, younger and older, to use drawing as their primary art form, or as another art form that they incorporate, that they take seriously and not just as a way to get to the painting. I think what's happened in the States, I see this quite a bit, that we want to get to that color, all that color. Drawings are just sort of a step along the way. I'm seeing now within the last decade or so, artists are turning back to drawing and looking at it as an expressive medium in and of itself, which I'm so thrilled to see because it's very accessible. And Ways of Drawing will show you lots of examples of things to try and techniques and also I guess when I talk about, visual language, different people developing their visual language using drawing. So this is a really great book. It's available on the internet. I think I've even seen it listed on Amazon recently as well. But you can definitely get it from the Royal Drawing School website, Ways of Drawing. And it is by, it's a Thames and Hudson puts it out, and it's introduced by Julian Bell. But I think you'll find the author is the Royal Drawing School. So there you have it, 6 books to add to your own art-oriented library, and I hope you enjoy some good and useful reading this summer. Thanks so much.